Marcus Williams had been through things most people couldn't even imagine. For 20 years, he served his country as a Navy SEAL. He had seen combat zones, missions that never made the news, and nights so long and heavy that he wondered if he would ever see the sun again. But all of that was behind him now. He had promised his wife Angela that when he retired, he would give her the one thing she always wanted: peace. That's why they bought a modest tan brick home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place with trimmed lawns, kids riding bikes down the street, and neighbors who waved politely when you walked by. It was supposed to be the dream. On a warm Saturday morning, Marcus stood in his driveway, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "World's Okayest Dad." He smiled as he watched his teenage son, Jamal, shoot hoops in the front yard. The boy was tall for his age, 15, with Angela's sharp cheekbones and Marcus's steady eyes. Angela stepped outside, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. She had been baking muffins, the smell of blueberries drifting out of the open door. She was the kind of woman who carried both strength and warmth in equal measure. When she spoke, people listened. "Marcus," she called, holding a piece of paper in her hand. "You won't believe this." Marcus set his mug on the hood of his truck and walked over. Angela handed him the paper. It was a printed notice from the Homeowners Association. He read it aloud, his deep voice carrying a trace of disbelief. "Violation of HOA Rule 14B. Mailbox color does not meet community standards." He looked up at her. "Mailbox color? Are you serious?" Angela crossed her arms, frustrated. "They're saying the paint is too dark. I used the exact shade from the store they recommended. Now suddenly it's a problem." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "After everything I've been through, the biggest enemy in my life is the color of a mailbox." Angela tried not to laugh, but her annoyance broke through. "I'm telling you, Marcus, these people don't stop. Last month it was the flower bed. Before that it was the recycling bin. I feel like they watch our house every day." "Let them watch," Marcus said calmly. "We're not doing anything wrong. They can't scare us with letters." But Angela wasn't so sure. She looked out toward the street, where a black and white HOA patrol car slowly rolled past, like it did every weekend. Inside, two men sat stiffly, wearing dark uniforms that looked far too official for a neighborhood group. "See?" Angela muttered. "Always circling, always watching." Marcus followed her gaze, his jaw tightening. He had seen eyes like that before, in war zones and dangerous cities. Overseas, the look of men who thought control gave them power. But he kept his tone light for Angela's sake. "Don't worry," he said. "They're just trying to look important. You know how some people are. No real authority. But they wear a badge and suddenly they think they run the world." Angela exhaled and leaned against him, her head resting briefly on his shoulder. "I just wanted a quiet life here, Marcus. I don't want trouble." He kissed her forehead. "And you'll have it. As long as I'm here, you're safe." That evening, the Williams family gathered on the back porch for dinner. Jamal devoured 2 burgers before Marcus even finished his first. Angela laughed and swatted at their son's arm. "Slow down, boy. Nobody's taking your food." Jamal grinned, his mouth full. "Mom, you make the best burgers. Better than any restaurant." Marcus leaned back in his chair, smiling at the sight of his family together. He thought about the men he served with, some of them who never made it home. He thought about the nights he wondered if he would ever get to live like this, to sit with his wife and son in peace and safety. But peace, he knew, was fragile. Halfway through dinner, the sound of a car engine drifted into the backyard. Marcus looked up, his instincts kicking in. Through the gaps in the wooden fence, he saw the same black and white HOA patrol car crawling down the alley behind the houses. The headlights flickered across their yard. Angela noticed, too. Her smile faded. "There they go again," she whispered. Jamal frowned. "Why do they keep driving around here?" "It's creepy." Marcus put a hand on his son's shoulder. "Don't worry about them. They don't matter. What matters is us." Still, he watched until the car disappeared. His training never really let him relax. Something about those men, the way they stared at his wife, the way they lingered outside his home, made his gut twist. The next morning, Marcus left early to run errands. Angela stayed home to tidy the house, humming to herself as she folded laundry in the living room. The doorbell rang. She opened the door to find 2 HOA officers standing on her porch. One was older, in his 50s, with short gray hair and a sneer that made her stomach turn. The other was younger, big and broad, his arms crossed like he was ready for a fight. "Mrs. Williams," the older one said, his tone sharp, "we've had multiple complaints about your property. We need to talk." Angela's heart skipped, but she kept her voice steady. "My husband handles those things. He's not home right now. You'll have to come back later." The older officer stepped closer. "No, ma'am. We're handling this now." Angela stiffened, clutching the doorknob tighter. Something in his eyes told her this wasn't just about a mailbox. Angela stood in the doorway, her knuckles white around the doorknob. She wasn't the kind of woman who scared easy, but the way the two men stared at her made her stomach twist. The older officer finally spoke again. "You've been warned 3 times about community violations. We don't tolerate repeat offenders in this neighborhood." Angela frowned. "Offenders? You make it sound like we're criminals. We pay our dues. We follow the rules." The younger officer, a muscular man with tattoos peeking out from his sleeves, scoffed. "That mailbox isn't the right color. And your grass? Too long in the backyard. You people think you can just ignore the rules?" Angela's eyes narrowed. "You people?" The man smirked, unbothered. "Don't play dumb. Everyone else manages to follow directions. Why can't you?" Angela's pulse quickened. She had heard enough ugly undertones in her life to know what he meant. But she kept her chin high. "I'm not discussing this without my husband. Now you need to leave." She started to close the door, but the older officer shoved his foot forward, blocking it. Angela's voice rose. "Excuse me? You don't just walk into my home!" The younger one leaned forward. "We can come inside if we need to. Rules are rules." Angela pushed back against the door with all her weight. "You're not coming in here." The older man's face twisted with irritation. "Fine, then step outside." Angela's jaw tightened. "No, not without my husband." That was when the younger man reached forward and grabbed her wrist. Angela gasped, yanking her arm back, but his grip was strong. "Let go of me!" "Stop resisting," he barked. Her heart pounded. This wasn't about grass or mailboxes. This was about power, control, humiliation. From across the street, a few neighbors noticed the commotion. A man in shorts pulled out his phone and started recording. A woman walking her dog froze on the sidewalk, her eyes wide. "Help!" Angela shouted, struggling against the man's grip. The older officer glanced around nervously. "Keep your voice down. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Angela's free hand clawed at his wrist. Her voice trembled with rage. "You have no right to touch me." The man shoved her backward. She stumbled onto the grass, her jeans scraping against the concrete step. Pain shot up her arm, but she forced herself to sit up. "Stay down," the officer growled. Angela's breath came fast. Fear, anger, humiliation, all of it boiled in her chest. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fight. But she was alone, or so they thought. The deep rumble of a truck engine rolled into the driveway. Tires crunched against the gravel. Marcus's pickup came to a stop, his figure towering as he stepped out. He wore jeans, a dark t-shirt, and an expression that froze the air around him. He took in the scene in a single glance. Angela on the ground, her wrist red, 2 uniformed men standing over her. His jaw clenched so hard, the muscles in his face twitched. Angela's voice cracked with relief. "Marcus!" The younger officer straightened up, puffing his chest. "Sir, your wife was resisting HOA enforcement. He never finished the sentence. Marcus moved fast. In 2 steps, he was between them and his wife. His hand shot out, seizing the older officer by the collar and yanking him off balance. The man stumbled, eyes wide with shock. "Touch her again," Marcus said in a low, steady voice, "and I'll bury you in paperwork." "You can't even spell," the younger officer bristled. "Hey, back off! You don't scare me." Marcus turned his head slowly, his dark eyes locking onto him. There was no shouting, no wild anger, just calm, dangerous control. The kind of calm that came from a man who had been trained to end fights before they began. "You put your hands on my wife," Marcus said. "That was your first and last mistake." The younger man squared his shoulders. "You think you're tough? I deal with punks like you every day." Marcus's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "Son, I was breaking bones before you learned to shave." Angela pulled herself up, her wrist throbbing. She reached for Marcus's arm. "Please don't hurt them." "It's not worth it." Marcus softened only slightly at her touch, his body still tense as stone. You all right? Her eyes watered, but she nodded. I'm okay. Neighbors began to gather now, drawn by the shouting. Phones were out, cameras pointed. Whispers spread through the crowd. The older officer shoved at Marcus's chest, trying to regain his pride. You can't assault HOA enforcement. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Assault? You want to talk about assault? You laid hands on my wife. The younger one glanced at the growing crowd, unease flickering in his eyes. But his pride kept him from backing down. He reached for Marcus's shoulder. In a blur, Marcus twisted his arm and forced him face first toward the ground. Not hard enough to break anything, just enough to remind him how quickly things could end. The man grunted, his bravado gone in an instant. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, He's got training! Look at that! Marcus leaned close to the pinned officer's ear. His voice was calm, steady, and cold. You don't know who you're messing with. Stay down. The older officer stepped back, uncertainty breaking through his scowl. He glanced at the patrol car parked crookedly in the street. His hand twitched toward the radio clipped to his belt. Marcus straightened, still holding the younger man in a controlled lock. His gaze burned into the older one. Call whoever you want, but you'll explain to them why you attacked a woman in her own yard. Angela clutched her wrist, her voice trembling but strong. You should be ashamed. Both of you. The crowd murmured louder. Phones recorded every angle. The older officer finally grabbed his radio. We need backup now. A moment later, the faint sound of sirens echoed in the distance. Marcus released the younger man, letting him scramble back on shaky legs. He stood tall, shoulders squared, his arm around Angela protectively. The younger man glared at him, but the fear in his eyes betrayed the act. This isn't over. Marcus stared him down, his voice like steel. You're right about one thing. It isn't. The sirens grew louder, the flashing lights of more HOA patrol cars cutting across the street. The quiet neighborhood had turned into a stage, and everyone was watching. The quiet street had turned into chaos. 3 more black and white HOA patrol cars screeched to a stop on the grass, their red and blue lights flashing like they were official police. Uniformed men and women spilled out. Dark shirts pressed, radios buzzing, hands resting on their belts as if they had real authority. Neighbors lined the sidewalks now, phones raised high, whispers spreading through the crowd. Marcus stood in the center of it all. His arm wrapped protectively around Angela's shoulders. Jamal had rushed out of the house when the sirens blared. His face pale, fists clenched. Marcus gave him a subtle shake of the head. Stay back. The older HOA officer, Peterson, pointed at Marcus, his voice cracking with anger. That man assaulted enforcement officers. Arrest him. The backup enforcers hesitated. They looked at the younger officer still rubbing his twisted arm. His pride wounded, and then at Marcus, tall, broad and steady like a mountain rooted in place. Marcus's deep voice cut through the noise. Let's get one thing straight. You broke into my home. You put your hands on my wife. That's assault. And now you're trespassing on my property. The crowd murmured louder. Someone shouted, Yeah, he's right. Another neighbor added, We've got it all on video. Phones lifted higher. Angela's voice trembled with anger. You think you can bully people because you wear uniforms? This is harassment. Everyone can see it. One of the backup enforcers, a stocky woman with sharp eyes, stepped forward cautiously. Sir, please calm down. Let's talk about this. Marcus kept his eyes locked on Peterson. His voice was calm, measured. I am calm, but I'm warning you. If anyone here touches my wife again, I won't be. The younger officer, Cole, still stinging from his humiliation, snarled. Enough talk. Let's take him down. He lunged forward, but Marcus moved like lightning. He sidestepped, caught Cole's wrist, and twisted him into a clean takedown that dropped him flat on the grass. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus leaned down, his tone low and even. Stay down, son. You don't know who you're dealing with. Cole groaned, pinned and powerless. A neighbor's voice rang out from the sidewalk. If you think Marcus should defend his wife, hit that like button right now. It was shouted as a joke, but it fit perfectly. Phones zoomed in. This moment was viral before it even hit the internet. Angela tugged Marcus's arm, tears in her eyes. Marcus, please. Don't do this. They'll twist it against us. He softened for a split second, brushing her cheek with his free hand. I won't let them hurt you again, ever. Then he straightened, his eyes locking back onto the officers. Peterson barked, "Grab him! All of you!" Two more enforcers moved forward, hesitation clear in their steps. One reached for Marcus's shoulder, but Marcus blocked with a quick parry and stepped back. He didn't strike them. He didn't have to. Every move was sharp, precise, controlled, reminders of the training that never left him. "Stop," Marcus said firmly. "I don't want to fight. But if you force me, you won't win." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. The flashing lights reflected in Marcus's eyes, steady and unblinking. Angela raised her voice again, standing taller now, courage replacing fear. "This is wrong. You're supposed to serve this community, not terrorize it. Look at all these witnesses. Look at these cameras. You think you'll get away with this?" The crowd cheered softly, emboldened by her words. More phones lifted. A chorus of whispers grew. "He's right." They went too far. "It's all recorded." Peterson's face turned red. He hated losing control. His finger jabbed the air toward Marcus. "You'll regret this. You don't know who we are." Marcus's jaw tightened. He took one step forward, his voice dropping low enough that everyone had to lean in to hear. "No," he said. "You don't know who I am." Cole, still on the ground, muttered bitterly, "He's just some old man." Marcus's eyes cut toward him. "Old man? I was leading Navy SEAL missions while you were still playing video games in your parents' basement." The silence was thick. Even the officers shifted uncomfortably, doubt flickering in their eyes. The standoff stretched on. The crowd watched, holding its breath. Angela held onto Marcus's arm like an anchor, grounding him. Jamal stepped closer, his young voice shaking but proud. "My dad's not just some guy," Jamal said loudly. "He served this country. He's a hero, and he'll always protect us." The words hung in the air like a challenge. The neighbors cheered louder now. Someone even clapped. The tide had turned. Peterson clenched his fists, glaring at Marcus. But he didn't step forward. Not anymore. Sirens wailed in the distance again, this time real police cars, not HOA patrols. The sound grew louder, closer. Red and blue lights reflected off windows at the end of the street. Marcus's expression didn't change, but inside, he felt the shift. Finally, someone with actual authority was on the way. He looked down at Angela. Her wrist was still red, but her chin was high. Her eyes, though wet, were fierce. He squeezed her hand gently. "It's almost over," he murmured. Peterson swallowed hard, his bravado draining as the real police cruisers pulled into the street. Marcus turned to face him fully. "You should have thought twice before laying a hand on my wife." The HOA patrol cars' lights still flashed across the neighborhood lawns, but they were losing their effect. Neighbors no longer looked intimidated. They looked angry. Phones pointed squarely at Peterson and his enforcers, catching every move, every word. Marcus stood steady in the middle of it all, broad shoulders squared, Angela close at his side, Jamal watching wide-eyed from behind. The real police cruiser slowed to a stop at the end of the street, sirens cutting out. Two uniformed officers stepped out, hands resting near their belts, eyes darting between Marcus, the crowd, and the cluster of HOA enforcers. But before they could fully approach, Peterson made one last desperate move. "Take him down!" Peterson barked, voice shrill with panic. "Now, before the cops get here!" Cole, red-faced and humiliated from earlier, scrambled back to his feet. His pride burned hotter than his bruises. He lunged at Marcus again, fists raised like a brawler in a bar fight. Angela gasped, but Marcus didn't flinch. In one swift motion, Marcus sidestepped, caught Cole's arm, and spun him with surgical precision. The younger man hit the grass again. But this time Marcus kept him there, face pressed into the earth, arm locked behind his back in a hold so clean it could have been from a training video. Cole grunted, kicking against the ground, but he couldn't move. Marcus's voice was low, calm, and sharp as a blade. "You don't get it, son. I'm not trying to hurt you. If I was, you'd already be broken." The crowd gasped. Some clapped. A few even laughed nervously. Angela stepped forward now, her voice rising above the noise. "Look at this. Look at what they've been doing to us. My husband came home to find me on the ground because these men decided they could put their hands on me. Is this what community enforcement means? Harassing families? Threatening women?" Her words hit like a hammer. People in the crowd nodded, muttered in agreement. some even shouting back, "That's right! We're tired of this!" Peterson's face turned red, veins bulging at his temples. "She's lying! Don't listen to her!" "Lying?" Angela snapped, fire in her eyes. She held up her wrist, the red marks plain for everyone to see. "Does this look like a lie to you? You grabbed me. You shoved me. In front of witnesses. In front of cameras." Phones zoomed in on her arm. The crowd roared louder. Marcus let Cole up slowly, shoving him back toward his fellow enforcers. The younger man stumbled, humiliated and defeated. Marcus turned his focus to Peterson, his voice cutting through the noise like thunder. "You sent your people to my house. You put your hands on my wife, and then you had the nerve to call me the criminal?" Peterson pointed a shaking finger. "You don't scare me. You're just another homeowner. We have authority." Marcus stepped forward, his presence towering. "Authority? You have none. You're a gang in uniforms, hiding behind rules you twist to suit yourselves. I've faced men with real power, real weapons, real armies. And I'll tell you this, you're nothing compared to them." The crowd erupted in cheers. Neighbors who had stayed silent for months now shouted their support. "That's right, Marcus. We're done being bullied." Peterson tried to yell over them, but his voice was drowned out. His enforcers shifted uncomfortably, doubt finally cracking through their bravado. Angela stood tall beside Marcus, her voice steady and clear. "This isn't just about us. This is about every family here, every letter, every threat, every time you made people feel small in their own homes. It ends tonight." The real police officers finally pushed through the crowd. One of them, a tall man with a steady voice, raised a hand. "What's going on here?" Before Peterson could jump in, half a dozen voices shouted at once. "They attacked her. He defended his wife. We've got it all on video." Phones waved in the air like proof of truth. The officer glanced at Marcus, then at Angela, then at Peterson. His eyes narrowed. "Everyone stay calm. We'll sort this out." Marcus didn't move, his gaze still locked on Peterson. His voice dropped, quiet but heavy enough to make everyone lean in. "You thought you could intimidate us. You thought we'd stay quiet, but you picked the wrong family. And you picked the wrong man." Peterson's face drained of color. For the first time all night, he looked unsure. Behind Marcus, Angela squeezed his hand. Her voice was softer now, but just as powerful. "We're not afraid of you anymore." The police officers stepped closer, radios crackling. The crowd pressed in. Tension crackled in the air, thick as a storm about to break. And then the officer said the words that flipped the entire scene. "All right. Everyone with HOA step aside. We're going to review the evidence." The enforcers froze. Peterson sputtered. Cole glared at Marcus from behind his bruises. But the tide had turned. The neighbors cheered, phones still recording, the noise swelling like a victory cry. Marcus wrapped his arm around Angela again, pulling her close. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with steel. "This isn't over," he murmured, loud enough for Peterson to hear. "But the difference now is, it's not just us anymore. It's everyone. The flashing lights from both HOA, patrol cars, and real police cruisers painted the street red and blue. Neighbors crowded closer, phones still recording. The tension that had built like a storm was finally breaking, and everyone knew something big was about to happen. The two police officers split up. One walked toward Peterson and his enforcers, the other moved to Marcus and Angela. The officer facing Peterson spoke first, his tone firm but even. "We're going to need everyone calm and cooperative. Step back, put your hands where we can see them." Peterson barked. "This is ridiculous. They're the aggressors. He's dangerous." He pointed toward Marcus like a child tattling on the playground. But the officer didn't look convinced. "Sir, we have multiple witnesses saying otherwise. We'll be reviewing video evidence immediately." Peterson faltered. His enforcers shifted uneasily, their fake authority stripped bare in the harsh police spotlight. The other officer approached Marcus and Angela. "You two all right?" he asked gently. Angela nodded, though her voice trembled. "We're shaken, but we're okay. My husband protected me." Marcus stayed calm, his military posture still straight, but his eyes were soft as he looked at Angela. They put their hands on her. "I couldn't let that stand." The officer gave a small nod. "Understandable. And from what I'm hearing, you acted in defense. Do you want to file a statement tonight?" "Yes," Angela said firmly, surprising even herself with the strength in her tone. "We want this on record." The crowd murmured their approval. Neighbors stepped forward one by one, holding out their phones. I got the whole thing right here. Me too. They were roughing her up before Marcus even got here. The officer glanced at the flood of evidence, then back at Marcus and Angela. Looks like we've got enough to get started. Thank you, everyone. Peterson, however, wasn't ready to surrender. He shoved past one of his enforcers, face twisted with rage. This is a setup! They've been after me for months. You can't believe them. The officer cut him off sharply. Sir, that's enough. We've got visual proof, multiple witnesses, and physical marks on this woman's wrist. I suggest you stop talking. For the first time, Peterson looked small. His words stumbled, his confidence crumbled, and his authority, so carefully built on fear, collapsed right there on the lawn. Cole muttered something under his breath, but his swollen jaw and bruised pride kept him quiet. The other enforcers hung back, avoiding eye contact, suddenly unsure if they were about to be charged themselves. The crowd, however, had found its voice. You're done, Peterson! No more bullying! About time somebody stood up to you. Marcus turned to his neighbors, lifting his voice so all could hear. This isn't about me, he said. It's not just about Angela. This is about all of us. About being safe in our own homes. About not being pushed around by people who think a badge they printed on a jacket gives them the right to rule us. Angela stepped closer, her hand in his. Her voice carried through the night. We've all been afraid to speak up. We've all wondered if we were alone. But tonight showed us something different. We're not alone. We're stronger together. Cheers rose from the crowd. People clapped, some shouted their agreement. The unity was undeniable. Marcus looked around, his tone steady, deliberate. So here's the call. Don't stay silent anymore. If you see injustice, speak up. If you feel threatened, document it. If you're treated unfairly, stand together. That's how we win. Angela added softly but firmly. Fear only works when we hide. Tonight we stopped hiding. The officers began escorting Peterson and his closest enforcers toward their patrol car. Peterson tried one last protest, but it was drowned out by the sound of neighbors chanting, Justice! 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 Jamal, who had watched silently for most of the night, tugged at Marcus's sleeve. Dad, you were amazing, his young voice cracked with awe. You didn't even hurt him. You just stopped him. Marcus crouched, looking his son in the eyes. Son, real strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting the ones you love. Remember that. Jamal nodded, his eyes shining. As the patrol cars pulled away, carrying Peterson and his men into the night, the neighborhood seemed to exhale. The flashing lights dimmed, replaced by the warm glow of porch lamps and streetlights. Neighbors lingered, some hugging Angela, others shaking Marcus's hand. For the first time in a long while, the street felt united instead of divided. Angela leaned against Marcus, exhaustion in her body but pride in her voice. We really did it, didn't we? Marcus kissed the top of her head. We did, but this is just the start. Marcus stepped forward one last time, raising his voice toward the cameras that were still rolling. To anyone watching this, if you've ever felt powerless in your own home, if you've ever felt like no one would stand up for you, let this be your sign. You're not powerless. You're not alone. You can push back. You can protect what matters. Angela finished the moment with quiet strength. Don't wait for someone else to fight for you. Be brave, be bold. Stand up for your family, for your neighbors, for yourself. The crowd broke into applause, not forced but genuine. It wasn't just relief. It was hope. The night ended not with fear, but with unity. If you believe in standing up for what's right, share this story. Talk about it. Don't let silence give power to bullies, because when we stand together, no one can break us.